What's up, marketers? Today's video is going to show you the exact build out of a Facebook ads account with a $500K per month budget, or around $17K per day. Now, this video is highly requested by you, so be sure to follow me over at Twitter, where I routinely do these polls to see which video you guys want me to make next. And if you're new here, my name is Dara, and I'm the Director of Performance Creative at the agency Thesis, where I work with D2C e-com brands that are spending anywhere from $500K to $5 million per month on their paid social advertising. So I've been managing the strategies inside of several ad accounts that have spent this much profitably. And I'm not gonna lie, if you saw my video that was about Facebook ad account build outs that are under 20K per month, you're gonna be really surprised to see how similar this is. And there's a really good reason for that, but more on that later. So for today's video, I'm gonna go over a few things. Number one, I'm gonna show you the build out of one of my accounts spending this much profitably. I'm gonna go into the budgets, the strategy, and also how we optimize an account of this size. Two, I'm gonna also go creative and more specifically show you the exact strategies that got the most traction out of this account. And number three, which is probably the most important, I'm gonna go over 4 tips and tricks for how to manage an account of this spend. Seriously, be sure to watch number 3, because I would not trust someone to run an account of this size unless they could do these few things. So let's go ahead and jump into this account. So jumping into the ad account here, you can see that this looks really similar to my previous video about account build outs that are under 20K per month. And this is by design. Really, post iOS 14, we do really see the best results with consolidated account structures. So even for my clients that are spending $500K per month or even up to $1 million per month, this is truly what it looks like in most cases. So the first thing that I want to talk about here is actually going to be the budget. And we can start off really easy, right? We have the retargeting campaign right here, which is at $2,000 per day. Jump in here, you can see that we have a social engagers 90-day audience and a website visitors 90-day audience. And those are all just like super broad retargeting audiences. The social engagers is anyone who's interacted with the Instagram or the Facebook, including the corresponding ads. And the website visitors is literally just like all website visitors, not even just like add to cart review content people. And the reason why is post iOS 14, those add to cart and really specific engagements on social media, those audiences are quite a bit smaller. Well, I guess not the ones directly on social media, but I always just like to keep that one as big anyways, because I tend to see the best performance out of that. And I am using a campaign budget optimization here to distribute that budget. And really for the most part, I tend to see CBO versus ABO as more of a media buyer choice. I tend to just let it rip in retargeting, and for core prospecting, it really does depend on how much traction we're going to be getting out of our broad audiences. So let's actually just go ahead and jump in here. Now you can see for our core prospecting campaign, we have about $9,000 per day overall, which is gonna be about 55%, I believe, or 52%. And these were the exact audiences that were performing really well for this specific client. So we had a general wellness audience, we had another interest stack that was publications, we had another interest stack that was TV shows, and then we had a completely broad audience. And you can see actually over time, this broad audience was really what was eating up a lot more of the spend. For this particular account, we weren't getting as much traction out of lookalikes, so I didn't include them there, but that's definitely something that we like to test in this core prospecting campaign. The idea here is that every single ad set contains top performing ads that we know are already really good performers coming out of that creative testing campaign. So let's go ahead and take a step back here and look at this creative testing campaign. Now, one of the big things about accounts of this size is you're going to be doing a lot of creative testing, and that's probably going to be the most important factor in your success with an account at scale like this. And you can see that really at any given time, we had anywhere from 7 to even 14 live creative tests running. So what we'd actually do is we would launch these tests with a 500 daily budget. And as we saw performance coming out of those new creative tests, we would then increase the amount daily. You can see down here that sometimes we actually got to really comparable scale like you would see in the core prospecting campaign. And that's by design. You always want to continually increase your spend directly in the testing campaign for a few reasons. Number one, it's a really good way to horizontally scale your account, and if you're getting good results, you never ever want to turn it off. So we really try to get as much traction out of it as we can. And even if we start dripping that into the core campaign where we're doing different interest and lookalike and even broad targeting there as well, it's just a really nice way to make sure that you're not turning anything off when it's working, which is one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen in accounts with junior media buyers. And to note, this is a question that I often get asked. For creative testing at Thesis, especially with accounts at scale, we are always testing on a broad audience. And there's a few reasons for this, and I have a video actually that's all about this where you can go look here. But the Cliff Notes version is strategically, we want creative to perform that has the best opportunity to scale. So we know that if a piece of content is performing really well on a broad audience, then it's likely going to be performing across our other interests, lookalike, and different types of like audience segments. The idea too is that if you develop creative that is made for a broad audience and has a broader appeal, that's going to be infinitely more scalable than creating a piece of content for teachers or for doctors. You're gonna find that you really burn out and have a lot more creative fatigue if you're creating small pieces of content for these small subset of audiences. It's really better at this point of scale to develop creative that has a much broader appeal so that you don't burn out on creative that quickly. So I wanna do just a really quick strategy overview. Again, we have 3 campaigns. One is this prospecting testing campaign. This is just creative testing, and every single creative is going to be tested against a broad audience. And if you pop in here, and I have a video that's actually all about how we approach creative testing at Thesis. Be sure to check that out if you want a deep dive. But essentially what we do, and especially what we are doing for accounts of this caliber, we would be launching a new ad set for every single creative test, but we're not gonna have just one ad in there. Oftentimes we are going to create anywhere from 3 to 6 different variants of a single ad concept so that we can bake in a little iterative testing while testing out net new concepts. And the way that we really like to approach this at Thesis is to try out different hooks, especially when we're first starting off with an account and we're trying to figure out what type of messaging and what type of imagery works best. So here we are testing out a TikTok response UGC video, and the core asset is going to be completely the same throughout, but the beginning 3 seconds is going to be different in terms of imagery and in terms of the messaging. So we're gonna essentially just test out 4 different hooks here. And again, when deploying these new testing ad sets, for this account, we were starting off with a $500 per day budget. Sometimes it would be $200, really depending on the cost per product and the current CPA or cost per purchase that you're getting inside of Facebook Ads Manager. But for this specific account, we were always starting off with a $500 per day budget. And really, the way that we would optimize specifically this particular campaign is, and really we would allow this to run for anywhere from 2 to 3 days and then begin to evaluate performance and begin optimizing essentially. And what we would do is first you have to optimize at the ad level. So if you notice, oh, this particular video is not performing well and it's not getting good spend or the results really aren't within your goals, go ahead and turn that off. Turn that off first before you turn off the entire ad set. And this can be done in conjunction with scaling and with turning off different ads. Essentially what optimizing is either scaling up budgets or turning off bad ads. In most cases, it's a little bit of both. So what we would do here and what had been done for this particular test is we would turn off the particular videos that weren't doing as well. So we'll go ahead and turn off this one. And then it seems, oh, on this particular day, we scaled it up to 1,000. And we probably wouldn't double spend overnight unless the results were doing really, really well, which I know for this particular test, it did very well. We would probably increase about 20% so that these ad sets don't go back into learning. And again, when we start to find winners in the creative testing campaign, we don't want to turn them off just because we're then dripping them into the retargeting and prospecting campaign. If something is working, the biggest mistake that you can make is to turn it off, because there is no guarantee that it is going to work as well in retargeting and prospecting. So really the golden rule for optimizing accounts at this scale is if you are getting results inside of your striking range or at your CPA goals, do not turn it off. Keep it spending. So one final thing before I jump into the other campaigns in this account is what we would do when we would find winners. So when we would find creative winners, we would try to get them to spend, particularly in this account, anywhere from, I'd say, 4 to 5 times the daily budget. So we'd want it to spend at least $3,000 to $4,000 approximately, is that math. I just know that those numbers are the ones that we were using. And once we would find that winner, then we would take, say this was the winner, right? We would then take this and then duplicate it into the retargeting and prospecting campaigns. And we would go ahead and drip that into all of those ad sets. And again, we would not be turning this guy off. I feel like it's just something I have to repeat. So let's go ahead and jump into our retargeting campaign really quick. This is going to be pretty simple. Again, these are all top performers, and the idea too is that you are going to be using the same type of creative that's performing the best in your prospecting and retargeting campaigns. However, what I tend to notice is that when you are optimizing these ads, that means turning off the ones that aren't performing inside of these different audiences. What ends up rising to the top in these two different campaigns tend to be a little different, which is kind of cool. So maybe something like a UGC testimonial will perform really well inside of your retargeting ad sets, but maybe it'll be something a little bit more branded that'll perform better in your prospecting campaigns. That does sometimes happen, and it did happen in the case of this account, which was really interesting. Now let's go and dive into the prospecting campaign. And again, when you jump in here, all of the ads that are inside these ad sets are going to be top performing creative that you've already vetted out inside of your creative testing campaign. And really, you're probably going to end up having multiple audiences that you end up optimizing, meaning you turn off when you're just not getting the good results that you want. And I have noticed that post iOS 14, in order to get the most amount of traction in an ad account or the most amount of efficiency, I did have to do a little bit more audience testing than I had done previously. However, I do notice that still a bulk of my spend is going towards these broad audiences. Lookalikes haven't been as effective for me recently, but I still test them. I like doing more of a stacked lookalike approach, and I like testing out a stack of different 1%, different 3%, different 5%. Really, I wouldn't put too much thought into the percentages of it. And really for lookalikes, the strategy that I would take is just, use a 5% lookalike audience and combine all the different types of purchase lookalikes that you can. So stack it with a pixel purchase lookalike that's at 5%, stack it with a custom audience that you export out of Shopify. I would also do the same for your Klaviyo audiences if you have that, and try and do like multiple segments if you can. What I mean by that is you could do like a VIP segment, so people that have only spent a certain amount, or people who have purchased a number amount of times, or people that have had a certain LTV. Try and do as many combinations like that as you can and then stack them. That's generally where I find success out of lookalikes. But I am still seeing a lot more traction out of interests and interest stacks. Now, if you're interested in learning more about my approach to interest stacks, I do have a video that does a deep dive on that. But essentially, right here you can see I did like a single interest ad set, which was just wellness. But here I had an interest stack for publications. And this would include like anywhere up to 20 publications that I think my target audience would like. I just pulled that number 20 really like out of nowhere, but I do try to keep my stacks under like 20 to 15 just so that I make sure that the audience is different enough from broad, and I'm trying to like help out the algorithm in that sense. And again, the same thing is going on here. If I'm going to be optimizing this specific campaign, I'm gonna go in here and I'm going to turn off the ads that are no longer getting me the results that I want, and then I'm going to be increasing and decreasing the budget. And I'm gonna be doing this pretty much daily. Particularly with accounts of this size, you're gonna notice a lot of fluctuation in terms of results, in terms of like what your pixel is registering, in terms of what's actually showing up on Shopify. So you're going to have to cross-analyze from multiple data sources. A lot of my clients right now are using Looker or Northbeam or Triple Whale. And I would really recommend getting an alternative third-party data resource in addition to Google Analytics. But we do have UTMs and use Google Analytics for all of our clients, and I am hopping in there to see how that's stacking up. But for the most part, I'm not using GA data to optimize inside of ad accounts. I am still optimizing my ad accounts from what is inside of Ads Manager at the ad level. But I am cross-analyzing certain ad sets, particularly the ones in core, with another third-party data resource to make sure that my gut check in terms of increasing or decreasing that spend is accurate. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is creative. So the actual creative tests that we were running in this particular account and the ones that did the best. And I think that something that I'll call out immediately that was really surprising is it was really hard to get UGC to actually perform on this account. So I know I talk a lot about UGC and about TikTok strategies, but you really do have to have a wide variety of strategy inside of each and every single one of your ad accounts, especially when you are starting to scale and have numbers of this caliber. I do not think that you can get these type of results on UGC single testimonials alone. So inside of the creative testing campaign, I have the top 7 tests that we ran for them overall, and I just want to go ahead and dive in and show you examples of what these ad creatives could look like so that you can test them out on your own accounts, because I already did and they worked really well. And if they worked really well at the spend, probably gonna work for you. So let's go ahead and just start down here. Number 1, a features point out ad. Now, this one's really interesting because I think that a lot of people see it and they think that it's too simple and they think that it's not going to perform. But over and over again, I've seen this type of ad really work out and help to scale accounts. And I really do think it's a good way to get branded, elevated creative without that much effort. And I know that I've shown this particular ad example several times on this channel, but Jason Wong from Dillash has actually said that this was the top performer for like all of 2020. And what's really interesting is I recently went back to their ad library to see if they were still running it. They are not. It finally fatigued after a year. But I do see that they are running something similar. So that just shows how important it is to iterate and grow from your creatives, especially when you found something that worked. And in the case of this account, this particular creative did really, really well for them. It was something that we were able to scale up in the creative campaign and drip into our prospecting and retargeting campaigns and scale up there as well. And again, we didn't ever actually end up turning this one off because we were able to maintain results essentially, which is really cool. And the next creative I want to talk about is a UGC single testimonial. And I know I just said that that didn't really perform super well for this account. We did find one single creator that tend to perform pretty well for them. So we did keep that running in the creative testing campaign, and it was something we were able to scale up into the prospecting core and retargeting campaigns. But I do recall that we left it at a pretty low budget and didn't scale it up as much inside of the creative testing campaign, or we did for a while, and then results ended up tapering off. But instead of just turning it off when results started to get a little too high, we did just bring down the budget. And I remember that we were able to maintain that particular creative at a lower budget. So we decided to continue doing that. And the third test is a branded us versus them GIF. Now, I recall this particular creative having really high hooks hook rates, and this was a bit more of an elevated creative than, you know, the normal UGC you're used to seeing on this channel. And this is something that after seeing this perform really well on this particular account, it's something that we started rolling out across more accounts as well. Typically with these ads, they tend to be in a split screen format. So this is something that, and I'm looking at the budgets here, you know, we were able to scale up for a while, but then brought it back down to this like 500 daily spend. But again, it's really all about following the data in terms of increasing or decreasing your budget. But this was something that we ended up rolling out to prospecting and retargeting too. Next up is actually a copy test that we did. So this ended up being the most successful creative that we had tested for them up until this point. So we did decide to do a copy test on that. Which was pretty lucrative. And this is something that I think a lot of media buyers forget or miss out on, which is testing different copy or different primary text or different headlines in your ad creatives. I would say particularly if you're at scale or if you're just starting off, so really anyone and everyone, I would focus more on testing that primary text copy as opposed to the headline. I haven't really seen many big swings out of headlines testing lately, so do at your own risk, I suppose. Now, the fifth ad is actually probably my favorite strategy to test right now in March 2022 on Facebook ads, which are these from the founder ads. Now, what's really interesting about this particular client is we actually split tested two really different types of strategies here. We did one that was more elevated, shot in a studio, a little bit more lifestyle, and then we also did a UGC version, and it was the more elevated creative that won out, which is really interesting. And this was one that we were able to get quite a bit of spend from. And if I'm not mistaken, actually, this was the one that performed the best over several months on this particular account, which is really cool. If you haven't done an ad that features messaging and perspective from the founder, that's definitely something that I would keep a lookout for and try doing if you have your own brand or business. You can even try this out on your iPhone, doing something that's a little bit more UGC, but it could be really beneficial if you are starting to get a lot of traction and you're starting to look at investing more in your creative. Invest in a from the founder shoot, I would say. And the 6 tests that did pretty well for them were actually the TikTok response UGC videos. This is something that I've seen work really well across many accounts, and I've definitely made videos about this ad strategy before, so if you didn't believe me, it's really time to go test this strategy. But we actually tested a few different things here, which is interesting. We did test the TikTok response bevel over top of more elevated creative to see if potentially that would work, since we did see more traction out of the more elevated creative here. We even tested it as an overlay from the founder video and even on the UGC single testimonial. But we did find that doing this TikTok response UGC overlay, which was a little bit more product focused in the subsequent content and messaging, did perform quite well for them. And it's, again, something I see performing across the board. So this is your sign to go check it out and try it for yourself. And the last test that ended up performing pretty well for them were some organic top performers from Instagram. So this is something that I feel like was really common to do several years ago, but hasn't been as common recently. But it's literally taking the content that has gotten the most engagement, so the most likes, the most comments, the most shares on your organic Instagram, or now your organic TikTok, and putting them in an ad set with the top performing copy and top performing headline. So this is something that ended up doing pretty well for them for a while. So it's something that I think is so easy and a way to provide immediate value. Now, if you are interested in testing out more creative strategies, and maybe you have a brand that is geared a little bit younger, I would say definitely give this video a look, which is all about the top TikTok creative ad strategies to test in 2022. Really, I am doubling down on this type of ad creative in 2022 and seeing a lot of really great results across all of my clients. So if you think that one of these strategies would be good for you, check them out, but be sure to take a look at that TikTok ads video. Now, most importantly, I have the 4 tips and tricks that I have for managing an account with this spend level. And tip number 1 is that you need to monitor your spend daily, probably multiple times a day. So you need to make sure that your ads your ad sets and your campaigns are spending the required amount every single day. My recommendation would be to set up a dashboard and to monitor your spend for today, yesterday, and the last 3 days to make sure that you are always on track for spend. Frankly, with these bigger accounts, spend is king because frankly, accounts of this size already have really solid product market fit and they have really solid KPIs, which is actually why often running the smaller accounts is a lot harder. I would say the biggest mistakes that I've actually made on accounts of this size are a lot more to do with ad sets or campaigns not spending the required amount and me realizing too late, as opposed to the results just not being there. And number 2 is actually one of the ways that I evaluate if someone is an advanced enough media buyer to take on an account of this spend, which is that you need to be looking at the breakdown data to look out for trends and anomalies. And specifically, again, you're gonna be looking primarily at spend here. And that's because post iOS 14, you actually cannot see the breakdown of purchases inside of that breakdown data. And the breakdowns that I routinely look at on a day-to-day basis include placements. So especially when I'm looking at certain creative tests and I notice that they're getting really good results, really bad results, or really just performing normally or consistently, like that would ever happen, I'm always checking out to see where they're actually being placed. So if they're going to Instagram feed, Instagram stories, reels, or something like that. And what I often find is that for ad tests that are doing really well, sometimes they're delivering to a completely different place than they would normally deliver, which is really interesting data. And that's like really interesting feedback that you can give to the client. And it's also, since I'm creating a lot more of this TikTok style content, it's been really interesting to see heavier placements towards stories and towards reels placements. Another breakdown that I am often looking at is devices. This has become really important post iOS 14. Sometimes I'll see if there's a bug or something going on. There'll be heavy delivery to Android, which typically doesn't happen. Really, what you're looking for in these breakdowns is anything that is atypical. So you should have some baseline for placements, devices, ages, and gender, and then reevaluating that in your creative tests to see if there's anything that's swinging in a different or new direction. That's always really exciting and really good feedback that you can give to your clients. And essentially, if you notice abnormal trends within any of these breakdowns, then that's a sign that you need to do more digging. And number 3, at this point in scale, creative is going to be way, way, way more important than targeting. And when I am working with media buyers that are managing accounts like this, I'm actually looking to them to provide way more creative strategy and insight than I am to be analyzing what types of audiences are performing best. Because again, in a majority of the ad accounts at this spend, broad is what is performing best for a lot of my clients. And yes, while we do find additional efficiency in targeting lookalikes and interests, maybe not lookalikes in this specific case, but it does happen on some of our accounts. Really, the biggest value that you can have on Facebook ads in 2022 is to be able to speak to what types of creatives are currently performing across the industry. Number 2, inside of your account and why they're performing. And number 3, what you think is going to perform next. Frankly, at this point, I feel like all media buyers need to be creative strategists, and there's just no way around that, considering how important creative is in 2022 on these platforms. And number 4 is to always shift your spend to performance. So on any given day, if something is performing, you'll want to increase spend there. And if you see, oh, this ad set isn't doing as well over the last few days, take the money from that worst performing ad set and put it into the better performing ad set. With that said, you have to be really careful about not being too reactive. And ways I see media buyers being too reactive is if they are turning off whole ad sets way too soon instead of just reducing that spend to see if you can gain more efficiency at a lower spend rate. So if you have bad performance, then you need to optimize to the best of your ability. And this goes for all accounts regardless of what size they are. So you can launch new creative tests in your creative testing campaign. You can launch new audiences in your core prospecting campaign. You can launch new copy tests. You can turn off bad performing ads. You can decrease spend on ad sets that aren't quite getting the same amount of traction that they used to be. You can increase spend where you see the results are better, but also you need to be aware about external factors. So that could be like industry trends, that could be certain holidays, that could be just knowing that your specific account doesn't perform as well on the weekend as it does during the week. And I'd say that the best way to keep up to date with these external factors is to be on Twitter and engage with other pro media buyers. I actually have a D2C Twitter list that would be a great first step if you are brand new to Twitter. But honestly, I feel like being on Twitter and having these relationships with other media buyers and founders and CEOs, it's like a hack. I feel like I know immediately when Facebook has a bug. I know immediately when CPMs are starting to soar for certain industries because we're all able to talk about it. So really, that has helped me a lot in being able to even like communicate with my clients when we see performance going down across the board. I mean, it's cool working for an agency because we can spot these trends in real time. Like all of a sudden, if tons of accounts have soaring CPMs or results are going down, that tends to mean that something is going on with the algorithm. But it is really helpful to have that color, you know, especially if you aren't working for an agency, from a lot of the people that I follow over at Twitter. So be sure to follow them. And that is it. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. It has been a long time coming. And what I think is really the most interesting about this particular strategy is it's really not that different from what I showed you in my account build out for budgets under 20K per month. Truly, worrying about things like a complex ad account structure or which audiences test and why, like these things are all super secondary to having the right creative strategy. Yes, you have to have the basics, right? Yes, every single campaign in this particular account structure has an attribution window of 7-day click, and we're also optimizing for a purchase conversion. Really, again, I work in D2C ecom. I'm going after those purchases and that ROAS, and those are really the big parameters that I have for a majority of my clients right now. Some of our clients, yes, they are using 7-day click, 1-day view. Some of them are still using 1-day click. A lot of that is more dependent on the user buying journey that that specific client has. But I'd say if you are having trouble optimizing for the best creatives, I would look at maybe increasing your attribution window so that you can have a better chance at optimizing your campaigns, particularly at the ad level. All right, and that's it. I actually have some really exciting stuff in the works for you guys. So I hope you like this one, and I'll see you next week. Later, bye.